Welcome. Take a breath. Let your body sink gently into wherever you are. Allow the rhythm of the day to fade, slowly and quietly into the background. Tonight, we travel together backwards through time, past the tick of clocks and the hum of machines, past books, ships, and swords, to a place where stone temples touched the sky, and the desert wind whispered through columns older than memory. Ancient Egypt, but not the Egypt of kings and wars, not the clash of armies or the building of pyramids. Tonight we slip into a quieter story, but as a cat, a smaller life, how it lingered in the space between footsteps and starlight, but no less sacred. Imagine yourself not as a pharaoh nor a servant, a temple cat, creature both adored and burdened, living within the walls of a great sandstone sanctuary under the gaze of gods and men alike. This is not a fable. It is a reflection of how life once was, how it felt, how it moved over the next few hours. We will walk through 4 soft corridors of history. First is through the quiet rituals of daily life for a temple guardian feline. Then, through the story of a royal cat laid to rest beside her pharaoh. Next, into the mysterious ruins and beliefs that enshrined cats as gods. And finally, into the contrasting lives of cats across Egypt's social layers, from divine duty to decadent luxury. Each step will be slow, each breath steady. You need not remember, you need not try. Simply listen and drift. Let us begin. You awaken not to an alarm, nor to birdsong, but to the hush of ritual. The temple has no clocks. It runs on rhythm, the turning of the sun, the lighting of lamps, the soft shuffle of sandals over polished stone. The walls glow faintly with early light, pale gold slipping through narrow slits high above. The air is cool, but dry, thick with the soft, earthy scent of incense lingering from prayers offered before dawn. You stretch. Slowly your back arches, your paws flex, but even here, even now, there is no freedom in your movements. You are not merely a cat. You are a vesselless symbol of divinity, breathing reflection of the goddess Bastet herself. The temple expects you to act accordingly. You rise from your resting place, a smooth-cut ledge beside a black basalt statue of Bastet, whose carved eyes have watched you since kittenhood, were born beneath her gaze. You were chosen marked with a streak of white above your brow, believed to be a sign. He kneels, and without speaking, begins your daily anointing. Novice priest approaches with soft footsteps. Your fur is combed with a brush made of bundled reeds. Your ears are dabbed with perfumed oil. Your paws are inspected each. One wiped with a cloth soaked in sacred water. You are not asked if this pleases you. You are not stroked for affection. Ritual. Maintenance of sacred order. This is duty. You sit on a cushion embroidered with papyrus and scarab motifs. Behind you, great columns rise like petrified trees into a shadowed ceiling. Before you, the high priest prepares offerings of dates and honey laid with meticulous care before the goddess statue, and you are expected to be havelled silent, composed, still. Once clean, you are guided without leash, without command to your station beside the inner altar. Visitors arrive throughout the morning. Nobles, priests, scribes. Their sandals make soft thumps on the stone as they bow, kneel, whisper. Occasionally one will glance at you. If you are grooming yourself, this is a good sign. If you are dozing peacefully, an omen of divine favor. But if you scratch behind your ear or sneeze, the mood may shift. The temple keeps records of these moments, omens, patterns, and though no one says it aloud, your behavior is watched, interpreted, measured, but you are not free to play. You may not chase the beetle that scurries near the column. You may not pounce on the fat mouse that dares skitter across the mosaic floor. Not here, not in sacred space. To hunt is base, to leap is wild. You must remain composed. You are expected to nap without snoring, to sit for hours without twitching, to blink slowly, divinely. Even then, one eye must stay half open. As midday arrives, the heat settles like a quiet weight upon the temple. There are duties. The air grows still, the stone beneath your paws now warm, but the ceremonies continue. The scent of myrrh deepens. The chanting drones. For breezes that should not be, brats bold enough to sneak toward the altars. And still you sit. Even sleep must come carefully. Only in the shaded niche behind the goddess's pedestal, where no one sees, are you permitted to rest, because even at night, you are a guardian of the sacred. When the sun sets and the priests retreat, you remain, patrolling the shadowed perimeters of the sanctuary, watching for movement. But you may not kill. Not here. Not tonight. Not. Instead, you stare them down quietly, reminding them of your power, your restraint. The temple is silent, save for the flickering of lamps and the soft clink of a chain in the distance. You settle again on your stone perch. Your tail curls. Your ears flick. Your gaze remains sharp. Until sleep comes, not as a friend, but as a brief and welcome escape. Time drifts forward now, just slightly. The temple fades behind us, like a half-remembered dream. Now we enter the royal court, not of stone and incense, but of sun-warmed papyrus, honeyed oils, and the faint, sharp scent of desert roses floating in shallow bronze bowls. This is the house of the pharaoh. And here, too walks a cat, but not a temple cat. No duties, no silence, only gold and grace. She had no name, or if she did, it's long forgotten. Her image lingers only in corners of murals, the edges of scrolls and ledgers, and in one painted coffin. Discovered deep beneath Saqqara near the tomb of a lesser king from the 12th dynasty, a cat wrapped in linen, surrounded by offerings, by treasure, by care. Who was she? The story begins long ago, in the quiet reign of Pharaoh Nebmot. Not a famous king, not a conqueror, but a thinker. His court was calm. Scholars, scrolls, stars, and in that world lived a cat, small white fur with caramel touches. Eyes, as one servant wrote, like river reeds lit at dusk. She belonged to no one, and everyone. She wandered freely, even into the pharaoh's private study, a sunlit space of scrolls and silence. There she'd curl at his feet, or stretch across the windowsill, tail flicking in time with his thoughts. Some said she whispered to him. Others believed she was a priestess reborn, but many simply noticed. The pharaoh smiled more when she was near. As years passed, she became more than a companion. She was painted in temple murals, always near his sandals. A tiny amulet made in her image was worn close to his heart. And one year, when floods ruined the harvest, the pharaoh went to the priests for guidance. She followed him, uninvited, unafraid. She lay beneath the altar. For 3 days, unmoving, they called it a sign, a symbol of peace in chaos. From then on, she was the pharaoh's watcher. When Nebmot died suddenly during a hunting trip, his tomb was prepared. And days later, she too, was gone. Some say she was laid beside him with ritual. Others say she simply stopped eating and waited. She was wrapped in 30 layers of fine linen, her eyes replaced with lapis lazuli, tiny golden mask placed over her face, its nose lifted as if judging the world. One last time. At her side, a bowl of fish bones, a painted toy, a ribbon of silk, and, strangely, a single scroll. When the tomb was opened 3,000 years later, that scroll was still sealed. It held no spells, no orders, no magic, just one line written in the pharaoh's own hand. She watched me when I slept, and I dreamed more gently. That was her gift. Not a warrior, not a god, not even a legend, just a cat. Watched and made a king's dreams a little softer. Let us now drift deeper into the space between story and silence. We step beyond palace walls and temple threshold, into the shifting sands where memory is half buried, and time lingers in bone and dust. Here, amid the slow patience of archaeology, we find another kind of cat, not an individual, but a presence, collected, repeated, multiplied. Thousands upon thousands of feline lives. Preserved, it was in 1888, in the village of Beni-Hazen, that the ground gave way. A farmer digging a simple well struck something strange. At first it was just one chamber, then another, and another, filled wall to wall with cats. A network of tombs and tunnels, not sculptures, not drawings, mummified cats, real cats, wrapped in linen, layered in shelves, stacked in boxes, silent. The archaeologists who arrived were stunned. They counted over 80,000 feline mummies. Some were tiny kittens no larger than a folded hand. Some bore necklaces. Others had their wrappings painted with delicate spiraling designs. One, displayed now in a museum far from the desert, wears a linen mask painted with eyes so lifelike they seem to blink. Why were they buried here? Why so many? The truth is still wrapped in mystery. Some historians believe the cats were temple offerings sold to pilgrims who wished to honor Bastet, a lionist turned domestic goddess of home, fertility, and protection. These pilgrims would visit Bubastis, a city known for its sprawling temple to Bastet, and purchase a mummified cat as a votive gift, leaving it behind as a sacred offering. Others suggest something older. The cats were bred in temple precincts, selected and raised under careful watch, prepared from birth to serve in death. But there are stranger clues. In one temple, feline mummies were found alongside tiny bowls of milk, dried figs, bits of fish, and small braided toys. Offerings not just for gods, for the cats themselves. This hints at something more than symbolism. Perhaps reverence, perhaps fear. Perhaps a belief that cats walked between worlds not as guides, but as watchers. The goddess Bastet herself changed over time. In her earliest depictions, she was fierce, a lion-headed warrior who defended the sun god Ra against the serpent of chaos each night. Later, as society shifted, so too did her image. She became gentler, more domestic, represented with a cat's face. Seated calmly, often holding a sistrum or nursing kittens, but the duality remained. Protector and predator, mother and warrior, serenity and sharpness. Some ancient texts suggest that cats could see into the hidden layers of the world, that their gaze followed spirits. They could see things humans were not meant to witness. To be stared at by a cat was not casual. It was divine scrutiny. One preserved temple, him, the priest chants. 1,000 eyes she wears in fur and tail. 1,000 paths she guards that curl beneath the veil. It is no coincidence that the word for cat in ancient Egyptian Miu is an imitation of the cat's own voice. To name them was to echo them. To call them was to mimic them. A culture that understood cats not merely as animals, but as symbols of order in a chaotic world. Even now, as we uncover these ancient mummies, we find ourselves unsure these remnants of devotion, or evidence of something deeper. In one tomb, researchers found a mosaic depicting a feast. On the floor beside the reclining guests sat a single cat. Beneath the table, eyes closed. Above it, an inscription. She eats nothing, and yet knows all. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, but it is unsettlingly serene. And perhaps that is what the ancient Egyptians saw in cats, not just companions, not even gods, but beings that knew when to be still and when to disappear. We end our journey now not in a tomb or a temple, somewhere softer, somewhere gilded. The world becomes quieter, warmer, lined not with sandstone, but with linen, not heavy with incense, but perfumed with pressed rose oil, date syrup, and gentle sandalwood. We step inside the walls of a noble household, not the pharaoh's court, not the sacred precinct, but the private quarters of a high official, perhaps, or a favored vizier, a treasury scribe. Sunlight slants in through a carved wooden screen, forming shifting patterns across the floor as the breeze stirs the reeds outside. And here lives a very different kind of cat. Imagine yourself again, not in the role of divine guardian, nor eternal companion of royalty, admired and absolutely in charge. But as a house cat pampered, your day begins in luxury, leisurely. You wake not on stone, but on a pile of papyrus mats, layered with woven linens dyed pale blue and ochre. Above you, doves flutter lazily beneath a fig tree. A child's laughter echoes faintly from the neighbor's wall. The day is warm, but not oppressively so. A servant enters the room, not to bathe you, not to dress you, but to offer choice. There are 3 bowls. One of fresh milk, another of river fish glazed in sesame paste, and a third delicacy mashed figs with a dusting of barley flour. You sleep again, you sniff each one, there is no hurry. Across the courtyard, no rituals await you, no sacred duties, no watching, only wandering. You pass beneath painted columns, stopping to rub your cheek along their base. You roll languidly on sun-warmed tiles. You curl inside a scroll basket among reeds used for record keeping. No one dares remove you. Your tail twitches. You sleep again. This is a life of abundance. It's not just of food or warmth, but of space, of time, of freedom. At midday, the household stills. A hush falls over the rooms as servants rest, and the master of the house reclines in his shaded study. But you remain awake. You patrol lazily through the shadows, not because you must, but because it pleases you. In the rear courtyard, a water basin glints with reflected sun. You paw at it, watch the ripples dance. A frog watches you in return. Later, perhaps, the mistress of the house will summon you to her side, not for prayer, not for ceremony, but for companionship. She stroke your ears while her attendants braid her hair. She'll murmur to you while her husband reads aloud a scroll about grain taxes or Nile floods. You won't listen. You won't need to. You are simply present, and that is enough. In this house, your name is written on the wall beside a painting of the garden. A small clay figurine carved in your image sits on a shelf beside perfume jars. The children mimic your walk, your stretch, your nap. You are adored, not as a god, not as a tool, but as a presence, comfort. And when night comes, you choose your bed perhaps at the foot of a warm couch, or on a cushion near the brazier, where herbs smolder quietly to ward off insects. Your breathing matches the quiet rhythm of the house. Your thoughts are few. Your sleep uninterrupted. You do not know the stories of temple cats. You do not feel the eyes of statues. You only know the softness of your fur, the scent of saffron on your paws, and the long, long night ahead. It is a simple life, but not small. You have known many things: warmth, rest, stillness, the quiet admiration of humans, and the gift of being left alone. In this, perhaps, you are closer to the gods than any statue ever was. The night grows deeper now. The desert cools. The wind softens. And as stars sharpen in the darkening sky above ancient Egypt, the world grows quieter, less structured, less ceremonial, and perhaps a little more strange. This is the hour when stories are shared in whispers, when lamps burn low, cats move differently. You've seen the temple, you've walked through palaces. But beneath and between these lives, another realm hums. The spiritual, the symbolic. The space where cats were not just seen, but sensed. In the marketplaces of Thebes, old women murmured charms as cats passed them. Not for good luck, but for clarity. To see a cat at dawn crossing your path from left to right was believed to bring a turning in fortune. To dream of a cat curled at the edge of a field was a sign of fertility. To hear a cat yowl beneath your window was more complicated. A warning, an omen, a forgotten god. No one agreed. But no one ignored it. Cats occupied a liminal space. Both creature and symbol. Both common and exalted. There are surviving fragments of dream scrolls used by dream interpreters, passed from apprentice to master. And in many, the cat appears. One dreams of a cat who will not meet your eyes, it says. One is being deceived by someone close. One dreams of two cats sitting back to back. Then beware of a false twin, a mirror self. But these were not omens of terror. They were not curses. They were invitations to look more closely. Priests in peripheral temples, especially those devoted to the moon, believed cats held keys to hidden knowledge. They described feline behavior in detail: blinking, stretching, sudden stillnesses, mirrors of divine timing. In one obscure set of papyri from the temple at Edfu, cats are used as models for ritual movement. Step as she steps. Wait as she waits. Speak only when the stillness breaks. To live like a cat was to live in sync with unseen rhythms. In the poorer quarters of the city, cats held quieter powers. Old women tied small stones or folded papyrus scrolls around a cat's neck to protect their home. In one excavation of a humble house in Elephantine, archaeologists found a niche in the wall, barely big enough for a sleeping dot, animal painted with faint ochre lines and filled with dried rose petals. The cat had a place of honor, not because it hunted rats, but because it had witnessed births and deaths and dreams. Even children were taught to speak gently around cats. "Do not lie in front of the cat," one saying warned, "for your lie will be passed along." They were watchers and carriers. A lost belief rarely spoken but often lived held that cats could carry words between worlds, not prayers, not commands, but those things too fragile to speak aloud. Longings, regrets, secrets left unsaid. It was believed that when a cat stared into a fire, it was not watching flame, but listening, or not. And when a cat stared at you holding its gaze just a moment longer than felt comfortable, it was deciding whether to carry your truth. No spells were cast, and its silence could unsettle the arrogant. No rituals performed, but in quiet rooms lit by low lamps, a cat's purr could calm the anxious. Even their movements, graceful, unpredictable, seemingly self-directed, were seen as small imitations of the gods themselves. The god Ra, who sailed across the sky each day in a golden boat, was said to be accompanied by a great feline, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden in the prow, watching the horizon for threats that even gods could not name. And when Ra descended into the underworld at dusk, it was this divine cat that leaped from the boat to slay Apophis, the serpent of chaos, so that morning could return. This is why many tomb paintings show a single cat beneath the sun, dispoised mid-pounce, claws drawn, not as hunter of continuity, but as protector. To the ancient mind, cats held the rhythm of the world, not just birth and death, but the quiet stretches in between, the gaps, the silence, stillness that most passed over. Cats never did. The night deepened still, and the sand once warm with sunlight now cools beneath moonlight. We drift now, not into the world of the living, nor fully into the world of the dead, but into the soft space between, the afterlife. A land of endless fields, perfect balance, and long shadows that move like silk. In the Egyptian imagination, this realm, the Duato, was not a place of rest exactly, but of continuation, reflection, a mirror of the world above, made still, out. And cats, like people, were thought to pass into it. But how they were remembered was different. Unlike dogs who guarded tombs or birds who symbolized the soul in flight, cats had no single fixed symbolic role in death. Instead, their presence slipped into many forms figurines, carvings, prayers, scents. One of the most curious legacies of ancient Egyptian feline devotion lies not in stone tombs or royal courts, but in the world of craftsmanship. Miniature statues, cat-shaped and delicately made, were found not just in temples but in private homes, hidden in niches, shelves, and even among kitchen tools. Some were carved from ivory, others molded in clay. Some had golden eyes. Some wore tiny collars painted on with crushed lapis pigment. These were not offerings. They were memories. A potter in Memphis once engraved the base of a small ceramic cat with just 2 words, soft voice. Another found at the edge of the desert near Kam Umbu was wrapped in linen as if for burial, yet no remains were inside. Just a small scrap of embroidered thread. These weren't grave goods. They were echoes. A way to keep a presence near. To feel the curl of a tail beside you long after the fur had faded. Even in the written word, we find signs of feline afterlives. Letters from the period known as the New Kingdom sometimes included brief, almost casual lines. The grain delivery was successful. We have moved to the new rooms. My heart still calls for little one. May she chase sunlight forever. Simple, unadorned, but unmistakably about a cat. This emotional bond was rarely stated outright in official records. but in private graffiti, scrawled on back walls of lesser tombs or in the edges of workmen-s huts at Deir el-Medina, cats appear frequently. Doodles of cats curled in baskets, cats napping on the legs of scribes, cats with tiny wings, drawn flying just above the head of the artist. No one commissioned these images. No one paid for them. And beloved, they were drawn simply because someone missed something small and silent. In some homes, small tokens were passed down: pieces of ribbon, clay paws, fragments of a collar tied in bundles with dried herbs and sealed in little linen pouches. Not for magic, not for preservation, just to remember. Even in the great cities where tombs were elaborate and death was full of ritual, cats were included in ways more intimate than grand. In one tomb, the sarcophagus of a royal physician includes carvings of all the things he wished to carry with him. A basket of tools, a fan, a favorite cup, and beside all of them, a cat, not standing, not posed in grandeur, just sitting, calm, present, watching. No inscription was needed. Anyone who saw it would understand this was no symbol, this was someone. And in a small side chamber, tucked near the rear of a communal necropolis far from any palace or temple, a fragment of painted plaster depicts a gentle scene. A woman, reclining beneath a fig tree. A cat sits near her elbow. She offers it a small fish. They both smile. It is not mythology. It is not ceremony. His companionship remembered and painted into eternity. The ancient Egyptians did not believe in endings. They believed in patterns, in returns, in soft continuations. A cat's life, they thought, did not stop. It shifted from form to memory, from memory to story, from story to symbol, and back again. This belief lived quietly, without decree or temple, but it lived. In the line of a child's drawing, in the hush that falls when a house cat watches a door long after everyone else has forgotten who once stood there. Let us stay here, just a little longer, drifting deeper into the folds of quiet civilization. You've seen the temples, tombs, the afterlives, but now we move not through stone, but through words, through ink, through scraps of thought. Things not meant to last, and yet they did, because cats, those soft-bodied, sharp-eyed creatures, didn't live only in ritual or memory. They lived in language. They lived in metaphor, and they lived in the quiet pauses of everyday Egyptian life. Let's begin with names. The ancient Egyptians were precise with names. They believed names had power, not just to identify, but to contain. Many cats were simply called Mew or Mew, words that mimicked the sound of their voices, the meow given back to them. But others, they had names like poetry. A linen tag from a scribe's home reads, Nebet Nefret, Mistress of Beauty, a cat's name. On a broken bowl fragment scratched in careful strokes, Shedet, the one who glides. Elsewhere, records show names like Light Drinker, Sleep-Sown Lotus, Daughter of Bastet. These weren't for ceremony. They were private names, whispered names. To name a cat was to acknowledge it, to meet its gaze, and return something honest. Cats also lived in proverbs, short rhythmic lines passed from mouth to mouth, carved on walls, etched on astraca. A cat does not chase the shadow of a hawk. The cat who waits at the gate eats more than the jackal who runs. Scratch a wall and it may not answer, but a cat will. These weren't just about animals. They were mirrors. Simple truths about patience, attention, quiet power. In ancient schoolrooms where boys learn to be scribes, practice tablets show familiar phrases repeated. The cat watches. The cat waits. The cat does not forget. And again, speak less than the cat. Listen more than the moon. We don't know who wrote these lines, but we know why. Cats weren't examples of strength or obedience. They were models of stillness, timing, knowing when to be quiet, and when to disappear. Even in art, they rarely took center stage, but look closely and you'll find them. Curled in corners of banquet scenes, tucked beneath offering tables, staring out from the edge of a family portrait, gazing more directly than any human. One relief from the old kingdom shows a man fishing. Children reach into the river, and beside the mast a small cat, not pouncing, not playing, just watching. Its inclusion is quiet, but not meaningless. In sacred texts, apprentice scribes doodled cats into the margins. A head on paws, a tail curling like incense smoke. You can almost see it, a candle flickering, the smell of ink and oil, and nearby, a cat, curled on scrolls, unbothered, unmoved, essential. They weren't gods every hour. They weren't omens in every moment, but they were present. Woven into the texture of daily life, a cat might be the first thing seen in morning light, stretching across a doorway. The last thing touched at night, curled beside an ankle. Its purr might blend with Nile wind in the reeds. Its yawn might echo a priest's final chant. And though no law protected them, its no single role defined them, they remained. Not out of power, but out of something softer. A presence so constant, it shaped the rhythm of life without needing to be named. Even the language held their footprints. The word for protection, SFN, used when describing a cat at a sleeping child's feet. The word for patience, can't, sometimes pictured as a cat sitting beside a sundial. Not science, but something deeper. Emotional truths, passed not by law, but by daily repetition. Like the brushing of fur, the placing of a bowl, or the quiet act of stepping aside to let a cat pass first. In a world shaped by balance, cats brought something else. Not order, not control, but grace. They didn't follow, they didn't lead, but they stayed near. And somehow, that was enough. Now the moon is high over the Nile, its reflection broken gently by the drifting of reeds and slow fish. The cities sleep, the workers rest. The scribes' lamps have been snuffed. But somewhere, a cat is still awake. We speak now not of what cats meant, nor what they symbolized, but of where they went. Because to live with cats is to notice them in edges and gaps, to understand that they do not follow human structure, yet they find perfect alignment within it. In ancient Egypt, architecture followed harmony. Rooms were arranged around light. Thresholds framed shade. Walls invited wind, and courtyards were not just open, they were orchestrated. And within all of this, cats knew where to be. In mud brick homes, they chose the cool thresholds between day rooms and sleeping chambers, resting their heads where shadow met light. In wealthier households, they curled on alabaster floors warmed by sun-filtered latticework, never too close to the source of heat, but just where it pooled. They found the quietest shelves, the narrowest beams, the corners no one swept. There are records from estate inventories that list broken scroll jars or crushed palm frond baskets stored on high ledge, cat sleeping. This was not an intrusion. It was simply how the space functioned. A place was complete only when a cat chose it. In temples, they roamed between columns not as intruders, but as witnesses, moving when no one looked, peering beside altars at dawn, resting beneath benches during long rituals, their breathing nearly inaudible beneath the chanting. In the tomb worker village of Deir el-Medina, houses were small, sometimes one room, sometimes two, and yet almost every excavated floor plan features a recess, a little platform in a corner, a niche in a wall, spot beside the brazier, just big enough for a curled-up body. These were not for pots, not for tools. They were places where a cat might sleep, not claimed by humans, but gently left alone. Outside in the fields, farmers described cats waiting in the shade of fig trees during harvest perched on walls, watching carts roll by, unmoving through the dust. They did not chase. They did not help. But they were there. And that present, quiet, neutral, observational was somehow comforting. Not protective, not affectionate, just certain. In one surviving letter from a merchant to his brother, he mentions, "The cat has returned to the courtyard. She sits now in the west corner, where she used to watch the rain. All is well again." This is how space was measured, not in bricks or beams, but in how it was used, by beings who never needed permission. Cats also followed time, but not by sun or water clocks. They responded to routine, repetition, sound, the clatter of morning bread trays, the first bucket drawn from the well, the scraping of reeds in the scribe's room, the hush that settled when prayers ended at dusk, and when those sounds changed, when a servant left, or a child grew older, or a room went quiet to sun cats noticed. They returned to old places. They sat in empty doorways. They waited beside unlit lamps. Without asking, they showed people what had shifted. Some said they were sensitive to spirits. Others believed they could see beyond the veil of the visible. They were simply aware of warmth, of routine, of absence. But often, it was in these silent observations that their presence grew profound. A cat on a palace wall meant little. But a cat waiting on a mat where someone once knelt in prayer. A cat who refused to sit where a favorite servant used to work. A cat who blinked slowly, exactly when a story ended. Those things meant something, not because they had to, but because they occurred without design, without effort, without translation. Just truth, in a small body, resting where it chooses. Even in art, cats were rarely shown in action. They lounged, perched, they stared. And in doing so, they grounded the movement of humans. They gave balance to the painted dance. One sculpture from the 11th dynasty shows a noble woman seated beside her harp. She plays with her left hand. Her right hand is still, resting gently on the head of a cat sitting just beneath the harp's curve. They are not looking at each other. There is no emotion depicted, but together they form a shape of quiet music. One soundless, one soft. That is how cats shaped space in ancient Egypt. Not with loud gestures, but with gravity. They pulled stillness toward them. They gathered the hush. They created architecture, not with stone, but with presence. The night stretches further now. The stars have wheeled slowly overhead, and in the softness between midnight and dawn, we enter a new space. Not a room, not a memory, but a rhythm. Because in ancient Egypt, life moved with the seasons, and cats, though timeless in posture, moved with them. There were 3 distinct seasons along the Nile. Akit, the flooding, Pare, the growing, Shimu, the harvest. And though cats marked no calendars, their behaviors folded quietly into these cycles. During a Ket, when the river rose and fields were swallowed in water, life shifted indoors. Families stayed close to their courtyards, repairing tools, telling long stories, sharing meals in shaded rooms. And the cats stayed with them. They slept longer, curled into windowsills, blinking slowly at the drizzle. They found dry shelves. They stepped carefully along beams, avoiding puddles on earthen floors. Some priests believed cats could predict the moment the river would rise, that their sudden disappearances or strange wakefulness in the early hours signaled change. There is a record from a provincial temple that reads, "The cat circled the pillar at midnight." 3 turns. The Nile began to swell before morning. Perhaps coincidence. Perhaps something else. But it was noticed and written down. During Pare, when fields bloomed and the air was filled with scent barley, onions, papyrus pollen cats were more active. They prowled the rooftops. They walked among farmers sowing seed. They disappeared for hours and returned with dust on their paws. Children saw this as a sign of luck. They would say, "The cat has walked through the god's breath," when a feline returned coated in pollen or mud. In paintings from this season, cats are shown stretched long in dappled shade, belly warm, tail flicking lazily as birds chirp nearby. They were not predators here. They were companions in rest. Festivals began to bloom as well, small local ones. Offerings of bread, fruit, and fermented honey set out in village shrines. And in homes, extra scraps were saved for cats, not out of charity, but out of respect, because in Pare, life returned. And cats who seemed never to worry, never to fear embodied, that returned better than any statue. Then came Shemu, the time of harvest. This was the busiest season. Carts rolled through villages. Men and women worked from dawn to dusk. Markets bustled with fruit, fish, clay pots, and folded cloth. And cats took on another role. They guarded granaries, not by duty, but by nature. Their presence alone was a deterrent to rodents, and many households took pride in the cat who watched the store. One inscription, barely legible now, on a granary door, simply reads, "She sits. The grain is safe." During this season, cats were often painted with eyes wide open, not in fear, but in focus. But there was celebration too, and nowhere was it louder or more alive than in the festival of Bastet. Each year, thousands traveled to the city of Bubastis, where the great temple of the feline goddess stood. They came in boats, singing and drinking, wearing perfumes and beads. It was one of the liveliest festivals in the Egyptian calendar, and at the center of it was silence. Because within the temple itself, amid all the joy, were inner sanctums where cats' living ones walked freely. They were not touched. They were not decorated. They simply existed. And pilgrims wept in their presence. It was said that to see a temple cat walk past you during the festival was a sign of renewal, a second chance, a year made whole. Many brought small tokens figures of bronze or wood, not to worship, but to leave behind, as if saying, "You were here, you saw me, that is enough." Outside the cities, the festivals were smaller, but even in rural homes, during Shemu, families offered cats tiny braids of palm, bowls of goat milk, or bits of salted fish on low plates. Children sang simple songs, just a few lines, passed down by memory. Little watcher of the wall, come sit when dusk does fall. Bring no claw, bring no cry. watched the stars with half-shut eye. These were not temple hymns, not part of official ritual, but they were no less sacred. Because in every season, the cat remained. It did not bloom. It did not harvest. It did not kneel in prayer. But it adjusted. It adapted. It waded through floods, walked among sewers. It stretched beside the rhythm of harvest songs, and it stared always. Stared as though it knew more than it ever needed to say. Even time could not move it too quickly. Even celebration passed beneath its stillness. In this way, cats were not just part of Egyptian time. They were the pause between its beats, the breath taken before a new season began. The night is vast now, the hush more complete than ever. Silence not of absence, but a fullness like a bowl filled to the rim with stillness. The Nile rests. The date palms sway without sound, and in courtyards across the land, the people of ancient Egypt sleep, or try to, because even in dreams, cats remain. Unlike gods who spoke in thunder, or ancestors who visited with clear messages, cats in Egyptian dreams were never loud. They rarely spoke. They almost never moved. But they appeared sitting in doorways, blinking slowly at dreamers, vanishing when acknowledged. And somehow, those appearances stayed long after waking. The Egyptian Dream Book. A surviving collection of dream interpretations written in the 13th dynasty includes only 3 entries about cats. They are sparse, mysterious. If one dreams of a cat by the river, the watcher is near. If one dreams of feeding a cat by firelight, there is something not yet said. The cat follows one into the reeds. Protection walks beside the sleeper. No threats. No fortunes, only presence. Some believe that if you saw a cat in your dream, something in the real world had shifted, perhaps an unseen decision. A warning unspoken, a silence that required attention. In rural homes, elders told children, "Speak your last word to the cat before bed. If you do not wake, the cat will carry it for you." It was not a superstition of fear, but of comfort. The belief that something soft and steady watched over the sleeping. In lullabies, cats made quiet appearances. Though most were not written down, echoes remain in fragments on astraca, in fading ink. Oral poems preserved later by scribes who recognized their music. One fragment sung to a child in the season of Akayat. "Little Sunfoot, don't walk far. The night is wide and full of jars. The fig tree dreams, the dove is still, come lie beside the windowsill." Sunfoot was a common nickname for a catch referring to the way their paws reflected dawn light after sleeping by open doors. Another lullaby recited, while a mother tucked in her child and a cat slept nearby. Cat of night with silent jaw, keep your watch without a flaw. I sleep now, don't let me hear anything sharp or cold or near. In these songs, the cat was not the subject. Not really. It was the anchor, the one who stayed awake while others closed their eyes. The one who needed no invitation to be trusted. Priests of Bastet sometimes described cats as the only creature who dreams both ways through sleep and through waking stillness, that their naps were not escapes, but visits. They were said to walk across the river of dreams the way humans crossed stone thresholds. Never hurried, never lost. Perhaps that's why in-tomb paintings meant to invoke peace. Cats are often shown asleep, not curled tight, but stretched full, paws extended, faces soft. A cat at rest was not just decoration. It was a wish, blessing painted in fur and shadow. May your sleep be like this, unguarded, undisturbed, uninterrupted. In one rare funerary amulet, a cat is carved from black basalt, its eyes inlaid with tiny chips of green glass. There is no inscription, but scholars have guessed. It was meant to be placed beneath the head of the deceased, to keep watch during that first great sleep. Even the language around dreams included feline imagery. To say someone had slept deeply was sometimes expressed as, he slept like a cat in flood season. This meant not just length of sleep, but confidence in it, safety in it, stillness so profound it could not be stirred. Cats did not guard with growls. They guarded with calm. And that calm multiplied across generations, across towns, and dynasties made its way into the culture of rest. A merchant traveling alone might sleep beside a clay figure of a cat. A priest suffering fever might place a painted paw under his mat. A mother might hum to a silent animal beside the fire, not because it understood, but because she needed it to hear. In this way, cats were part of the subconscious landscape of ancient Egypt. They wandered not just through alleys and temple columns, but through the dreams of children, the silence of the sick, and the spaces between one thought and the next. They were the shadow on the stair when you swore you were alone. The warm weight on the foot of your bed that hadn't been there moments ago. The soft thump, just as your breath deepened. Even now, in the desert winds that curl through ruins, in the eye of a statue worn smooth by time, in the hush of a museum room lined with ancient stone, that presence remains quiet, unprovable, certain. The cat waits and dreams with you. The night, now impossibly still, hangs like gauze above the rooftops of ancient Thebes. The moon is tipped westward. The last lamps flicker low. And in this weightless hour, this hour where thought slows and silence folds around the bones of the world, we slip even deeper. Not into what cats did, nor where they went, but how they experienced. Because to live beside cats in ancient Egypt was not just to observe their behavior, but to wonder what they knew, to imagine what they sensed that others could not. Their ears, for instance, tilted slightly forward even in sleep, catching the scrape of sandals outside, the flutter of linen, the sigh of a reed door opening 3 homes away. Children whispered that cats could hear a lie, that if you spoke untruth in a cat's presence, its ears would flick, not toward you, but away. Disdainful. Priests of sound temples, who studied echoes and harmonic resonance, occasionally noted feline presence at key ceremonies, not as part of ritual, but as barometers. If the cat remained, the balance was right. If the cat left, the rhythm was wrong. Even their whiskers were more than decoration. Fishermen along the Nile told stories of cats who could predict when boats would drift too close to reed banks. They would wake suddenly from sunlit naps, bristle slightly, and walk to the shaded side of the house, long before any shift in current was visible. The whiskers twitch before the water speaks, they said. To ancient builders, this became metaphor. An inscription carved onto a beam in a collapsed home in Memphis reads, "We tested the weight as the cat tests wind." Quiet trust in perception. No calculation. Just a stillness that listens first, and then their eyes. Ah, the eyes. Much has been said, some of it exaggerated, some of it true. But in Egyptian life, a cat's eyes were not just admired for beauty, they were used to mark time. It was common to say, "I will return in 2 blinks of Mu," meaning shortly. Or, He watched the sun move as a cat does, to describe someone who had waited, unmoving, all afternoon. Painters mimicked cat eyes in depictions of the sun disk itself, elongated, almond-shaped, flared slightly at the corner. Some believed the vertical slit of a cat's pupil, when it narrowed at midday, signaled the true center of the sun's power. Others saw it as a sign of judgment or even memory, the deceased asks. In some funerary prayers, let the eye of the cat know I was kind, that it blinked slowly once for me, because slow blinking was trust. That motion, barely a breath in time, was considered one of the gentlest gestures in creation. Many tombs contain painted scenes of cats doing almost nothing, simply resting, perhaps watching, perhaps blinking. But to an Egyptian eye, this was enough. It was a sign of peace, of presence. Even their sense of smell was honored. During incense rituals, when frankincense, myrrh, and kefi smoke drifted across temple floors, it was said that the cats would rise first, long before the priests. They would arch their backs, walk in tight loops, and settle in new positions, as if reorganizing the air. One priest from Bubastis recorded, "The cat moved thrice before the scent reached the altar. She has found the true line of the offering." People watched these movements not with awe, but with quiet curiosity, a belief that the cat knew something not divine, perhaps, but true. And their sense of balance, too, was seen not as agility alone, but as a kind of inner harmony. To walk along the edge of a wall, to perch on a clay jar without tilting it, to leap without sound and land without stirring dust. These things were not only admired, they were interpreted. Young dancers were trained to mimic feline steps in early choreography. Tightrope walkers at harvest festivals called themselves children of the whiskered ones, and scribes, when their hands shook, would rest until they could write like the cat walks. Steady, precise, unbroken. These five senses, hearing, sight, smell, touch, and balance merged in the Egyptian imagination into something more. A sixth quality, knowing without needing to prove. This was the quality most revered. Cats did not hesitate. They did not second guess. They responded. They moved. They trusted the space around them. In this way, they taught something that no scroll could record, no statue could show. They taught the art of being tuned, not to noise, but to nuance, not to order, but to flow. To sit beside a cat was to feel a small portion of the world quiet down, to fall in step with an older rhythm, one that had no name, but many followers. And so the people noticed, and they remembered. Not with great stone carvings, not always with names, but with pauses, with gentle imitation, with stories told in low voices, at dusk, beside open windows, where cats still sit, listening. Now, the sky is almost black velvet. The stars glint faintly, like old silver scratched smooth by use. And somewhere between the 5th and 6th hour of night, even the wind hushes, not because it is gone, but because it too listens. And here in this deep silence, where thoughts slow and time unspools, not one written in stone, but one understood by the body. The cat does not fear the dark. In ancient Egypt, the night belonged to many things, 2 jackals and spirits, 2 stars and gods who watched from behind the moon. But in homes and temples and quiet courtyards, There was a presence even older than lamps and chance. The cat had walked without hesitation between day and dusk. It moved easily across shadowed floors, slipped between torchlight and ink-black corridors, not rushed, not hidden, simply ... At home, where humans lit oil and traced protective symbols on doors, the cat moved without such worries. Some said the cat had its own kind of fire, a flicker in the eyes that burned low, enough to see by but not enough to blind. There are records of nighttime offerings given to Bastet not with drums and music, as during the great festivals, but with silence. A single bowl of milk placed quietly before a closed shrine, while a temple cat sat watching. No ceremony, no words. It was called the Hush Offering. It was said to bring peace to sleepless households, or to those whose dreams had turned uneasy. People believed cats could walk between the seen and unseen, not just in sleep, but in waking night. A superstition from the village of Abuser held that if a cat passed in front of your home after midnight and did not look at you, your thoughts were pure. But if it paused even for a moment, you were hiding something, even from yourself. It wasn't fear, it wasn't judgment. It was a kind of quiet mirror, moving on 4 feet. In temples built to align with the stars, certain cats were allowed to roam the upper galleries, even when humans were not. Priests noted which columns they chose, which thresholds they crossed, and when they vanished into shadow, it was said they were counting the dark, measuring the shape of what could not be seen. Even the way cats slept at night was considered meaningful. It's unlike dogs, who turned and circled and curled tightly. Cats would often stretch out, resting with a paw extended toward the doorway, or their back to the center of the room. This posture and guarded, unhurried, was read as a kind of wisdom. To sleep like that in ancient Egypt was to trust the world, to accept night as not a threat, but a space. Many families who had no statues, no amulets, and no protective prayers still slept better when a cat stayed near. Not because they believed the cat would fight what came in the dark, but because it would notice. There is a tale written in the margin of a scribe's notebook, not intended for formal reading. It tells of a child who cried each night, afraid of being alone. A cat began sleeping on the windowsill, arriving at the same time, leaving just before dawn. No one placed it there. No one fed it. But the child stopped crying. Years later, when the child had grown, they placed a bowl at that same window every night, long after the cat was gone. For the one who walked with the quiet, they wrote, even in metaphors, cats were linked to the night. To describe a thought you couldn't quite catch, you might say, it moves like a cat in shade. To describe a feeling of being quietly observed, the dark has whiskers tonight. To comfort a friend overwhelmed with emotion, let it pass like a cat walking through your heart, quiet, clean, and gone. These phrases were not meant to be poetic. They were practical, passed between generations, used during illness, heartbreak, childbirth, death. Cats were not the answer, but they were always present, a kind of still gravity around which emotion could calm itself into the deep hours, when even the priests had gone silent and no rituals remained, and the city whispered only in wind and water. You could still find them on rooftops, in alleyways, perched atop warm clay ovens, waiting beneath reed blinds, curled beneath headrests in homes where dreams had grown too heavy. They were not lost. They were not waiting. They were simply there, and in being there, they changed the shape of the night. Dawn still hesitates, The horizon holds its breath. And in that pause before the world remembers to turn, there is sound. Not loud, not obvious, but layered, woven through space like threads of smoke. And if you listened, in ancient Egypt, if you truly opened your ears not just to language, but to atmosphere, you would notice it. The sound around cats, because cats were not silent. They were not mute icons of mystery. They had their own music, subtle, precise, unpredictable, and the Egyptians, attuned to rhythm in all forms, noticed. There are written prayers to gods of wind and flood, gods of harvest and silence, but almost none to sound itself. Why? Because in daily life, sound was memory, and cats were its keepers. Take the rustle of thatched reed mats as a cat slipped beneath, a whisper barely louder than breath. Mothers recognized it as their child's companion returning from a rooftop nap. Fathers heard it as a sign the oven's warmth was holding steady, otherwise the cat would not have come. The sound of soft landing, a pat, then a stretch. Always in the same spot, always with the same rhythm, enough to mark time in homes with no clocks. One woman's diary fragment reads, "He lands at the same moment each night. I know when to light the oil." Even more than footsteps, the pause between sounds told people the cat was near. A silence slightly different. Not empty, but waiting, filled with breath, with choice. And then, perhaps, a small chirrup, that questioning trill some cats make when entering a room. Not a meow, not a demand, just a sound to say I am here. Are you too? That chirrup appears in 6 separate pieces of Egyptian household writing, described variously as the cat's greeting. The soft call, or, most curiously, the question without teeth. In temples, cats moved across limestone floors, nails tapping like raindrops. Priests believed this rhythm could calm a scattered mind, as some recited verses in time with the pacing of a cat. Others used the soft tap of claws as a way to measure breath during meditation. Inhale 4 steps, exhale 3. There is even a set of devotional instructions that includes, if the cat walks, walk after it. If it stops, sit with it. Let your breath match its footfalls. You will find the center. These were not worshippers of cats. They were students of their rhythm. Then, of course, there was the purring. Egyptian scribes lacked a single word for this sound. They used metaphors instead. The mill of sleep. The song of stone softened by heat. The skies hum before sunrise. By now, the world has forgotten motion. Even the sand seems to breathe more slowly. The light beyond the window is no longer night, but it is not yet dawn. This is the hour of the old, when only the very young and the very ancient still move, quiet as breath, unnoticed by time. And in ancient Egypt, as in so many places, those who lived long lives knew the value of slowness. They knew how to wait, how to watch, and always how to listen. And beside them, often curled at the foot of their mats, or seated silently beneath their stools, was a cat. Not a temple cat, not a prized royal breed, just a companion of similar age, with a gait no longer quick, with fur dulled by the dust of years. The old and the cat shared something no inscription could record, the shape of time when it no longer runs. In village homes, elders watched the sun's path, not with instruments, but with cats. He turns when the light shifts, they'd say. I rise when his tail curls west. One grandmother, remembered in a letter etched into limestone, was said to speak only to her cat in her final days. She did not use words, only hums and soft clucks of the tongue. And the cat, so it was told, answered. It blinked when she sighed. It stretched when her breath caught. And when she passed, it stayed beside her reed mat, refusing food for 3 days. The family, unsure what to do, wrapped both in the same cloth. One had lived long, the inscription reads, and the other had listened. Among scribes, those who wrote well into their 60s and 70s, the phrase cat time was used to describe a state of mind. Not rushing, not lingering, just continuing. One scroll, fragment of advice from an elder to his grandson, says, if you must finish the scroll, write with cat time. Let your pen wander, but not stray. Get it pause, but not stop. Let it rest when tired, and begin again when ready. In some small towns, cats were used as memory aids. Old women whispered family names to the same cat each morning. They called it their lineage keeper. Others taught cats the rhythm of door rituals, how to sit as each sibling passed in or out, how to blink slowly as if remembering who they were. To visitors, it seemed like a trick, but to those who lived with the cat, it was a quiet act of anchoring. In the temples, older priestmen and women alike were said to retire not into solitude, but into cat watching, not study, not meditation, just presence. They would sit in outer halls and watch the temple cats move, from sun to shadow, from platform to cushion, from silence to the soft yawn of dusk. They believed that cats, in old age, did not stop being divine. They simply became more discreet about it. There is a single statue found near Abydos of a seated elderly woman with a cat stretched across her lap. The woman's head is bowed. She is neither queen nor priestess, just a figure. But the cat is carved with exquisite care. Every fur line, each toe, the curve of its body alive, though made of stone. Beneath the statue, the words, I grew still, he stayed. We watched the world together. And then, of course, there was the passing. Cats, like people, grew old. They limped. They lost appetite. They spent more time in warm corners than chasing beetles. But no one in Egypt looked away. When a cat died, it was not hidden. It was remembered gently, intimately. Some families placed a feather in the doorway for a week. Others lit a single oil lamp at sunset until the 7th day. One tradition held that on the night a cat passed, you must speak aloud the quietest thing it had ever done. He blinked at the firelight, someone might say. Or, she curled inside my robe when I had no words. These were not grand eulogies, or fragments. Whispers of moments otherwise forgotten. Held up like papyrus scraps in a breeze. Entombs for the aged cats were sometimes buried nearby, not in grand coffins, but in small linen wraps. And their resting places were often unmarked, not from neglect, but because, as one text says, he did not need a name. He was always there. Cats taught the old how to rest, how to forgive a world that moved too fast, how to curl without shame, how to blink when words were too much. And in return, the old gave cats their final audience. They did not demand tricks. They did not seek worship. They only asked, "Stay near me. Don't leave before the quiet begins." And the cats always stayed.
By now, even the stars have begun to soften. They no longer blink. They breathe. Slow, wide, and still. And in this hush, as your own thoughts drift like reeds in slow-moving water, we follow a final question. Not what did the people dream of cats, but what did the cat dream? The ancient Egyptians never asked this directly. Not in stone, not in scrolls, but across generations, in whispers and gestures, they left traces, hints, that perhaps the cat, in its sleeping shape, in its silent breath, was not only resting, but seeing. In some homes, people believed cats could dream across thresholds. That while humans dreamed in one world, filled with ancestors, birds, strange rooms, and rivers, cats dreamed in layers. The word for dream, resut, appears beside drawings of closed-eyed cats in a handful of private tombs. And beside those cats, symbols for prophecy, portents, and the moon. It was thought that when a cat twitched in its sleep, it was not chasing mice or flies, but adjusting timelines, just slightly, just enough. One belief, rare, barely recorded, says this: the dreaming cat speaks not with sound, nor with image, but with weight. He places one thought heavier than the others, and that is what becomes real. In other words, cats were not prophets. They were tilters. They shifted dreams, by presence alone, toward what most needed to be seen. A merchant once wrote of a dream in which he stood on a narrow bridge, unsure which way to turn. A cat appeared, sat down in the middle, and looked behind him. When the merchant awoke, he chose to delay a journey by one day. That day spared him a flooded crossing. The cat did not warn me, he said. It simply reminded me to wait. This is how cats were believed to guide, through stillness, through example, through dreams that were not messages, but mirrors. In temple schools, some students were told, if your question is large, sleep with a cat at your feet. If the answer is important, he will remain. What the cat dreamed, no one could say, but its continued presence was enough. In certain border villages near Nubia, a myth told to children late at night went like this: when the world gets tired, the gods send a cat to dream it back into balance. He sleeps under a fig tree, and every time his tail flicks, a new thought is born somewhere in the world. Not lightning, not fire, just the smallest movement, from the softest place. And in the cult of Bastet, though cats were never said to speak, some believed that if a cat stared at you while asleep, with one eye open just a slit, you were being read. Not judged, just known. Your story, your sorrows, your secrets, absorbed like heat into fur. There's one ivory carving, delicate, unfinished, of a cat curled on a cushion, surrounded not by offerings but by thoughts. They are represented as floating symbols: a question mark, a palm leaf, a spiral, a closed eye. This, scholars believe, was not a depiction of a sleeping cat, but a dreaming world from the cat's perspective. What did they hear? What did they gather? In this quiet hour, you might imagine it. The cat curled near your foot or near your pillow. Breath deep. Chest rising, slow and round. A twitch of the ear. A tail that curls once, then settles. You feel a thought leave your mind, but it does not vanish. It drifts and is caught by the one who dreams without words, who returns nothing, but holds everything. And somewhere in the space just outside your own sleep, a thread is nudged. A weight is shifted, and the answer begins to form. The world by now is made of circles, circles of breath, circles of memory, circles of silence, echoing within silence. And in ancient Egypt, repetition was not seen as dullness. It was not boredom. It was a kind of devotion, the motion of sweeping the same courtyard every morning, the daily lighting of a lamp at dusk, the winding of papyrus cords again and again around the same scroll. To live well was to repeat well. And at the heart of this ritualized life, often quietly, without demand or announcement, was a cat. Because cats, too, lived in loops. They walked the same paths, circled the same spots before resting, returned to doorways at precise times of day. They turned within themselves like tiny suns, flickering, warm, self-contained. In one household record from Heliopolis, a man writes, "My cat walks the same line of tile every morning, brushing her tail against the corner pot. When she does not come, I know the weather will shift." Another entry from a temple scribe says, "The cat has chosen a new beam to rest upon." We will begin our verses anew. In this way, cats served as marks of rhythm. Their habits created invisible calendars. They gave shape to time not by measuring it, but by simply being there. Children were taught to follow the cat's rhythm to learn patience. Wait until she circles twice before offering food. Do not interrupt her cleaning. Watch how long she waits between stretching and walking. These were not rules. They were lessons in stillness before action. Even priests learned from these motions. When preparing for offerings, a priest might pause at the altar, not in prayer, but in imitation. He would curl his fingers like paws. He would take 3 slow breaths before pouring oil. They said, "The cat teaches us not how to worship," they said, "but how to move while we do it." A surviving instruction for novice temple attendants includes this line: "If you feel haste rise in your blood, find the nearest cat. Watch, sit, begin again." And indeed, across the painted tomb walls and scroll borders, cats are often not the centerpiece, but the counterweight, near the action, but not in it, near the offering, but untouched. Their presence was not interruption. It was anchor. One philosopher of the time described the cat as the curve in the straight line, the pause between steps, the stillness that moves. In festivals, while drums pulsed and dancers spun, cats wandered among the crowd. Not frightened, not lost, just unmoved. Observers sometimes watched them instead of the performers, finding in their meandering pace a kind of contrast, a parallel ceremony, the ritual within the ritual. At the marketplace, cats traced routes between stalls, not random, but memorized. They passed by the fishmonger, paused at the date seller's awning, sat beneath the spice jars as if cataloging the air. And always, someone would smile and say, "She's doing her rounds." Not begging, not lost, just fulfilling a pattern no one had written. These acts were never official, never documented. But over time, they accumulated meaning. A cat who sat in the same doorway for 19 days straight was believed to be warding off a bad wind. A cat who slept atop a newly woven rug was considered to have blessed it. A cat who circled the same fig tree 3 times at dawn became, quietly, a local guardian of its fruit, not by decree, but by habit, by repetition. And so the people began to reflect on their own repetitions. They swept more slowly. They stirred bread longer. They waited to speak until their hands were still, not to imitate the gods, but to echo the ones who echoed the world. In doing so, life became ritual without pressure. And in those rituals, those loops and spirals, those slow returns, sleep also found its place. To sleep, they believed, was not escape. It was the final circle of the day, a returning to self, a gentle enclosure of all that had passed. And for many, it began when the cat curled once, twice, then stilled, just as the oil lamp lowered, just as breath evened, just as the world forgot urgency and remembered only rhythm. Now the veil between waking and sleep is thinner than silk. Thoughts no longer land. They hover, float, and sometimes vanish entirely. It is in this delicate state, between knowing and unknowing, that we meet the cat again. Not as a creature, not as a symbol, but as a gesture. One so subtle you nearly miss it. Because one of the most sacred things the Egyptians believed about cats was this. They knew how to disappear without leaving. Not absence, not abandonment, but the kind of invisibility that is intentional, generous, and full of meaning. To vanish softly was a form of respect. In temples, cats moved through colonnades with a precision that left no trace. Their paws were clean. Their paths never crossed the priests during sacred rites. And yet, somehow, they were always exactly where they needed to be. A scribe writes, "She walked through a patch of dust but left no mark. I understood that I too must pass lightly." The idea of passing lightly became a spiritual practice, not to be unseen, but to be undemanding. Some old houses had walls worn smooth where a cat had passed daily. Not because the cat was noticed, but because the wall felt different without her. One carving in a quiet tomb near Saqqara shows a cat poised behind a pillar. She is not in the scene. She is beyond it, watching. And beneath her image, a line. Those who do not speak may still hold the center. This concept extended to human behavior. There were women who modeled their grace after cats, leaving a room without interruption, making decisions without announcement, appearing only when needed, then gone again like a breeze through linen. Men too learned to wait before answering, to walk without heavy steps, to listen more than speak. And the elders, they spoke of the quiet eye, the feeling of being observed not with scrutiny, but with presence. "The cat saw me grow old," one man wrote, "but never asked me to explain it." Invisibility, then, was not a loss. It was a gift, to give space, to leave room, to trust that your presence was understood, even when unspoken. At night, cats often disappeared into courtyards. They moved among trees and jars and moonlight, and no one called after them, because it was believed, if you call the invisible, you break the spell. Let them return when ready. Some left offerings, not food or trinkets, but space. An open seat, a clean patch of floor, a window kept ajar. These were not traps. They were invitations. And in the morning, if the cat was there, curled softly in the corner, you understood. She had accepted your silence. Some people live their entire lives like this, with soft presence, unspoken loyalty, and the kind of attention that doesn't interrupt. One woman was buried with no statues, no gold, only a flat stone carved with a line from her daughter. She was like the cat, near me always, even when I could not see her. And what about the final moments? Those quiet hours before death? There too, cats remained near. Not loud, not active, just still, watching, allowing, not demanding grief, not offering answers, only being present enough that the world, for just a moment, felt complete. This, perhaps, is the cat's truest lesson. Not how to live, not how to be worshipped, but how to be
Now,
there.
even your thoughts are
So
quieter
gently,
than your breath.
so lightly,
They
that
move
nothing
like
around
mist
you is
through
disturbed,
reeds, sometimes lingering,
and yet everything
sometimes vanishing before
feels
you know they
calmer.
were there, and still. The story continues. Because in ancient Egypt, the end of life, human or feline, was not an end at all. It was a transition, hush between two songs, a pop print leading softly into the next chapter. For humans, the Book of the Dead offered spells and guidance. For cats, the rituals were gentler, not fewer, not less sacred, but quieter. Folded into corners of daily life, whispered at thresholds, buried beneath fig trees. It began, always, with noticing. Not the moment of death itself, but the moment of stillness, the absence of the familiar step, the sound that did not come, the gaze that was no longer returned. When a cat passed, the household did not weep loudly. Not at first. Instead, someone would say, "She has gone to her second walk." And in that simple phrase, an entire belief system breathed. They believed that cats walked to lives, the first among humans, in clay homes and sunlit courtyards, and the second in the beyond, among reeds that never dried, under moons that never faded. The second walk was not mysterious. It was not distant. It was simply elsewhere, and so the people prepared. Not all cats were mummified, but many were. Archaeologists have found thousands wrapped carefully with tiny amulets sewn near the chest, little fish-shaped charms, tiny carved legs of a stool, even fragments of linen from their favorite resting cloth, not because the cat needed them, but because we needed them to be remembered. A papyrus fragment tells of a boy who buried his cat with a scrap of his own tunic because, as he wrote, "She waited each day for me to come home. I'll now wait for her." In larger households, a passing cat was honored with a small vigil, not a funeral, just a circle of quiet. The cat placed gently on linen, oil lamp beside her, perhaps a dried lotus blossom resting on her fur, and the family would sit, not in tears, not in chants, but in presence. They believed that a soul should not be pulled from the world, should be released. Softly, and cats, they believed, were better than most at this release. They know when to leave, an old woman once said, and they know how. There were tales told only at night, only to those falling asleep, about the fields beyond death where cats ran freely, but never too far, where they climbed trees made of turquoise, where they curled on warm ledges of eternal clay, where the air smelled always of honey and straw. Some imagined that the goddess Bastet herself gathered them one by one in the soft of dusk, placing each upon a glowing cushion in her eternal chamber. Others believed they turned to stars, not the bright ones, but the soft ones, the dim, slow-blinking stars just before dawn. "Look there," someone might say, pointing upward. "She's watching." But more often than not, remembrance did not look to the heavens. It looked to home, where the rug still held the outline of their body, where the door still swayed slightly, as if expecting a familiar push, where the silence was not empty, but shaped like a sleeping cat. In many homes, people left bowls of water in the corner for weeks after, not because they expected a return, but because habits, when born from love, do not die with the body. Some families whispered the cat's name once a day as a way of keeping the second walk warm, and if the name was forgotten, that too was okay. Because cats, they believed, remembered you, even when you didn't remember them. This was a comfort, to be remembered in the beyond. Not as a master, not as a caretaker, but as one whose lap was warm, whose voice was soft, whose presence had meaning. And the afterlife, in turn, was shaped not by reward or punishment, but by familiarity. The cat would find her same cushion, her same sunbeam, a version of the home she loved, now eternal. "When I die," one woman said, "I hope to wake to her purring beside me." and in tomb art there are echoes of this belief. Scenes where the deceased sits beneath a fig tree, and just beneath the stool, in the corner of the image, a cat sleeps. Not every tomb, not every time, but enough to know. This was not decoration, it was company. In the more elaborate mortuary temples, offerings were left not just for the deceased, but for their pets. Milk, bits of dried fish, feathers, a single feather, always white to help guide the cat's second walk. Some priests argued that the cat's soul did not need guidance, but still, the feather was left. Not for the cat, but for us. Because grieving is not about what the lost one needs, it's about what we need to keep walking. The Egyptians understood this deeply, and so they continued the rituals long after the cat was gone. They sang her soft songs. They swept the places she had walked. They told children bedtime stories of her younger days, when she had climbed the grain jar or curled inside the laundry basket. These stories did not fade. They became part of the home, and in this way, the cat was never truly absent, only moved, only distant, like a shadow behind a reed curtain, like warmth in a room with no fire. And sometimes, on the stillest of nights, someone might feel a breeze stir at their ankles, or hear a soft sound on the roof, or wake for no reason at all, only to find themselves calmed, and they would smile and return to sleep, because they knew a presence had passed through, not to haunt, not to speak, just to remind that love once given does not die, that a quiet bond once woven holds its shape, and that somewhere, just beyond the corner of the waking world, cat walks her second life, slowly, lightly, forever. Some moments in history, they feel close, like ghosts in an old house, echoes in the halls. Moments that feel less historical and more like yesterday. This feeling can come to you while walking a familiar street or seeing a well-worn object. Sometimes it arrives with the smell of rain on warm pavement or a breeze through tall trees. Today we want to share a collection of work and stories about these in-between moments. Moments of quiet connection and change that surround us always, if we know where to look. To infuse harmony into your designs, start by considering the principles of balance and proportion. Embrace minimalism in both form and function to create spaces that exude calm. Begin by decluttering areas and removing any unnecessary visual distractions. Appeal to multiple senses to create a harmonious and immersive environment. During construction, workers would make offerings to deities like Thoth, the god of wisdom, to ensure accurate measurements and alignments. For example, the pyramid's alignment with the cardinal directions is remarkably precise, suggesting astronomical knowledge. They also believed that the Nile River's annual floods deposited fertile soil. Because the river goddess was appeased, they kept the river's power in check through rituals. Consider the sense of touch by incorporating soft textures, such as plush rugs, cozy textiles, and natural materials that invite physical comfort. Engage the sense of sound by incorporating soft instrumental music or nature sounds to establish a peaceful atmosphere. Infuse subtle fragrances through the use of essential oils or scented candles to create a calming and inviting aroma. Additionally, incorporate visual elements such as soft lighting, nature-inspired artwork, and calming color palettes to create a soothing and visually appealing environment. Remember that multi-sensory design is about creating a holistic experience. By engaging multiple senses, you can transport your visitors to a realm of tranquility and relaxation. Choose furniture with clean lines and avoid overly ornate or fussy designs. Opt for natural materials that bring warmth and texture without overwhelming the space. It was thought to embody the pharaoh's spirit and protect the eternal resting place. Instead of traditional tombs, Old Kingdom pharaohs built massive stone structures called pyramids to house their remains. Pyramids symbolized rebirth and immortality, guiding the pharaoh's soul to the afterlife. Incorporate elements of negative space to provide a sense of openness and allow the eye to rest. Keep surfaces clear and avoid overcrowding areas with excessive accessories. Remember that simplicity is not about starkness or coldness. Infuse warmth and personality into the space through carefully selected pieces that serve both aesthetic and functional purposes. Strive for a visual equilibrium by distributing elements symmetrically or asymmetrically in a way that feels balanced. Incorporate large windows, skylights, or glass doors to flood the interior with sunlight. This natural illumination will create an uplifting and refreshing ambience. Possible blur the boundaries between indoor and outdoor areas by using sliding glass walls or retractable doors. This seamless transition will foster a sense of openness and connection with the surroundings. Integrate natural materials such as wood, stone, or plants to bring the outdoors in. Use these elements to create a sense of warmth and tranquility. Consider incorporating water features such as a small fountain or an aquarium to introduce soothing sounds and visual relaxation. Incorporate natural forms and shapes inspired by nature, such as flowing curves and organic lines, to create a sense of balance. Additionally, use color palettes that promote relaxation and tranquility. Soft, muted tones, cool colors, and natural hues can help establish a harmonious atmosphere. Remember that balance and proportion should extend to the overall layout and functionality of the space. Ensure that furniture and objects are appropriately scaled and arranged to create a sense of order and flow. Each piece here speaks to the unseen rhythms that weave through our lives. Through symbols and paintings, photographs and poetry, they reveal the subtle patterns and harmonies all around us. We hope that as you explore this collection, you feel a sense of calm wash over you. Almost as if the noise of the world has been turned down and you leaning into a moment of pure awareness. Pay attention to what resonates with you, what catches your eye or stirs your soul. Embrace the quiet strength that surrounds you. You are not alone. These works see you, hold you, and remind you that moments of reflection, stillness, and peace are always within reach. So take a deep breath, let go of tension, and immerse yourself in this experience. Allow these moments to recharge you, bringing a sense of clarity and composure into your day. Here are 5 ideas that bring a sense of slow, steady, quiet to their design. They are principles that help us tune into the subtle music of existence. By understanding the different distances people naturally use in various contexts, you can craft spaces that feel comfortable and inviting. For example, intimate conversations often take place within 18 inches. So when arranging seating in a room or planning a small gathering, aim to keep the circle tight. For more casual social situations, maintain a distance of 4 to 12 feet. And in large open areas, provide enough space so that individuals or groups can comfortably spread out, while still feeling connected to the overall environment. This sensitivity to personal boundaries helps everyone feel seen and heard. See how these ideas can inspire you to live more intentionally and find harmony in every day? When designing structures, consider the concept of proxemics, the study of personal space. Harmony is an essential aspect of creating a sense of calm and balance in a design. In the realm of design, simplicity emerges as a powerful tool for establishing a sense of peace and tranquility. Honoring the connection between the indoors and outdoors can significantly enhance the sense of calm and tranquility within a space. Begin by maximizing natural light. In the pursuit of creating tranquil spaces, the concept of multisensory design emerges as a powerful tool for enhancing the overall experience. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs were considered divine rulers who connected the human and divine realms. The Great Sphinx of Giza, with its lion's body representing strength and Pharaoh's head symbolizing divinity, guarded the pyramid's complex. Many thanks to our author, whose love for Egyptology led them to share their knowledge and passion in this video. As always, keep creating. It is time for bed. Do you know why? Because the day has gone soft. And when the day goes soft, the animals go home. They creep and crawl and fly back to their dens, to their lairs, to their nests. They are simply meant to be witnessed, to be observed quietly as leaves fall from a tree, as dust settles on the floor, as the moon moves, slow and shy, across the desert sky. And in ancient Egypt, no creature was more revered as a witness than the cat. Only a sculpture of a sitting cat, eyes wide and polished, positioned so that the first and last light of day passed through them. The light remembers itself, they said, when it touches her gaze. And so the cat became more than symbol. She became a kind of lens, a way of seeing without controlling, of knowing without owning. So I invite you to join me right now in a little experiment. See, the outside world is loud and harsh. Things move fast. People come and go. You have to be quick. You have to be smart. You have to be clever. You have to be beautiful. You have to be rich. It is full of wonder. It is full of mystery. And all we need to do is open our eyes to see it. They remind us that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. Take a moment to bask in the warmth of her presence. This hush that falls over the world, this softness that wraps around you, this peace that settles in your heart. Let the darkness cradle you like a mother's arms. Breathe in the peace, breathe out the chaos. Allow your body to relax, your mind to unwind, your spirit to soar. In this sacred space, you are free to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to be exactly who you are. No need to hide, no need to pretend, no need to perform. Just be. In this space, you are loved. You are accepted. You are enough. This is the time to let go of the day's distractions, to release the tension you didn't even know you were holding on to. This is where you recharge, rejuvenate, and remember who you are. And renewed, ready to face the world with a newfound energy, a clearer vision, a deeper sense of purpose. But for now, just rest, just be, just love. This is where you reconnect with your intuition, your creativity, your soul. This is the time to sink into the quiet depths of your being, to allow the shadows of the night to soothe and heal you. Thank her for reminding you of the simple power of just being. They remind us to slow down, to be present, to pay attention. They remind us to stop chasing the wind and start savoring the sweetness of life. All we need to do is quiet our minds and listen to the whispers of the universe. And when we do, when we truly see, we begin to understand that we are part of something bigger than ourselves, that we are connected to all living beings, that we are part of the great tapestry of life. If you're not, if If you can't, if you don't, then you get left behind. But here, in this quiet, in this still, in this softness, you don't have to be anything. You just are. Here, in the watchful gaze of the cat, you can shed all the weight of the world, all the expectations, all the demands, all the labels. Here you are just you, and that is enough. Close your eyes and imagine a peaceful scene. Maybe it's a walk in the woods, the sound of birds, the feel of the sun on your skin. Open your eyes now, my dear, and look at the world with new eyes. Look at the world as the cat might look at it, with curiosity, with wonder, with a quiet attentiveness. Let the world unfold before you like a precious gift. Be amazed by the beauty, the complexity, the mystery of it all. Let your gaze linger on the details, on the patterns, on the textures, on the play of light and shadow. Let your eyes be windows to your soul, reflecting the divine spark that resides within you. Maybe it's a cozy night and a good book, a warm fire. Whatever you're seeing, hold on to it, breathe it in, let it fill your senses. Now slowly begin to bring your attention to your eyes. Feel the weight of your eyelids, the darkness around the edges. Notice any stray thoughts or feelings without judgment. Just let them drift by like clouds passing overhead. Now bring your focus back to your scene, letting the details unfold, the colors, the textures, the sounds. As you do this, you may feel a sense of calm wash over you, a feeling of being present in the moment, of being fully alive. Keep practicing this until you can call it a habit, until you can carry that sense of peace and presence with you wherever you go. Not a messenger, not an oracle, not a judge, but a silent keeper of moments. Your eyes dart here and there, trying to take it all in, but you feel scattered, unmoored, alone. When we watch, we are letting things be as they are, accepting reality in all of its messy, imperfect glory. They use the statue as an anchor, a focal point for their concentration. They stared into the polished obsidian eyes and tried to lose themselves in that gaze, trying to embody the stillness, the patience, the attentiveness that the cat embodied. They wanted to transform their own gazes to mirror the cat's, to become, if only for a moment, more centered, more aware, more mindful. We are cultivating a state of mindfulness, a state of being fully present in the moment, letting go of the need to control or manipulate. Then you spot a cat perched on a nearby ledge, calm and centered, taking in the scene with an easy grace. You turn towards her, and as you meet her gaze, something shifts. You feel anchored. You feel grounded. Her stillness is like an oasis in the desert of stimulation, reminding you of the simple power of being present. The eyes of the cat were not symbols of power. They were tools of patience.
Watchful but never insistent.
Focused but never invasive.
That
They did not pierce. They absorbed. And in that absorption, they transformed the world around them. Back to the warm, dark places where they keep themselves till the sun returns. That to sit within it was to be seen, not in parts, not in roles, but in total. In those intense golden eyes, the Egyptians saw not judgment, but understanding. They saw not interrogation, but acceptance. And that, they believed, was pure magic. Everything curls up and goes to sleep, doesn't it? Leaves, clouds, branches, dreams. Gaze both gives and takes. We demand something from another's eyes, even if it's only their fleeting attention. And when we give our attention, we expect something in return. But the cat's gaze was different. It gave without expectation, witnessed without demand. The whole wide world rests its head until the next sun rises. The day is done. And don't you wish, my dear, that you, too, could curl up and be done for a while? Don't you wish you could rest your head and let the night unfurl its magic over you? Well, tonight I will show you how. Tonight, we will close our eyes together and become still. We will open ourselves to the dusk and all its wonders. We'll soften like the daylight and melt into this midnight hour. There are some moments in life and in the night that are not meant to be changed or solved or even fully understood. To be watched by a cat was considered a special experience. It was said that the cat's gaze could cool the fever of a restless spirit. When we look at someone, we change them, don't we? In some temples, the inner sanctum held no idol. Imagine yourself in a busy marketplace, overwhelmed by sights and sounds and smells. You see, when we watch, we are fully engaged with what is happening. We are paying attention, observing, absorbing. In that ancient Egyptian temple, the priests didn't just sit in the presence of the cat statue, they meditated in it. But you don't need a polished obsidian stare to cultivate this kind of presence. You just need to be willing to practice. Now, I haven't told you yet that there is a reason why we are doing all of this. I told you we would close our eyes, but I forgot to tell you to open them again. Ah, you see, my dear, the world is full of magic. Now, I haven't told you yet, but this is also why we love cats. They remind us of this truth. So the next time you see a cat, my dear, take a moment to appreciate her wisdom. Take a moment to learn from her example. This midnight hour is the perfect time to practice. So close your eyes and surrender to the embrace of the night. This is your sanctuary, your refuge, your place of power. And when you're ready, you can emerge from the darkness refreshed. By now, your body has softened. Your breath has slowed. Your thoughts arrive not as sentences, but as clouds passing through a sky too wide to hold them. And so the world begins to tilt gently to dream. But in ancient Egypt, dreams were not escape, they were travel. A kind of slow walking, not with your legs, but with your memory, your longing, your wonder. And if you wandered far enough in your dreams, you might find that you were not alone, because the Egyptians believed cats walk in dreams, not as symbols, not as memories, but as visitors, real, present, unbothered by the rules of distance or time. A cat seen in a dream, one dream scribe. Recorded is not your mind. It is the mind of another, brushing past you. Their presence in dreams was considered sacred, a kind of soft blessing. An unspoken message from the hidden parts of the world. Some dreams were quiet, a cat sitting on a windowsill that didn't exist, a cat walking across a floor you didn't recognize, a cat curling up beside you just before you woke, and yet you remembered her gaze, the sound of her breathing, the sense of being noticed in your sleep. Dream dash scribes, those trained to interpret. Visions kept long scrolls filled with cat dreams, each one marked carefully, not by meaning but by tone. Dreamt of a striped cat walking on water, felt peaceful. Dreamt of a cat sitting in a tree I used to climb, felt remembered. Dreamt a cat stared at the moon until it cracked open, woke crying. Don't know why. These were not omens, not fortunes. They were crossings, moments when something beyond waking passed gently through. One belief said that cats, especially those who had died, could visit their former humans in dreams, not to send messages, but to keep the connection. Alive, it was called Mutseked, the returning hush. When the cat appears, they said, "You are not dreaming, you're being visited." There are letters written to cats placed beside their mummified forms asking them to appear in dreams. "Walk with me once more." One note reads, "When the lamps are out and I am alone, I will leave the door open inside my sleep." And sometimes they did. One scribe told of dreaming that his cat brought him a papyrus reed, laid it at his feet, and vanished. When he awoke, he wrote his first poem in 3 years. Others claimed they woke with the scent of their cat on the sheets, or found paw prints in undisturbed sand near the window. Did they imagine it? Perhaps. But the Egyptians did not think of dreams as imaginary. They were places, and cats were the only beings who moved between places without needing to knock. Some temples taught initiates to invite cats into their dreams. They would sleep beside small statues with incense burning, chanting softly until they drifted into the in-between. If the cat came, they did not speak. They did not teach, they simply sat. That was enough. "She sat beside me on a boat I did not know," one novice wrote. "We drifted for hours. I have not been afraid since." In paintings, there are few depictions of dreaming, but sometimes. Hidden in the corner of a bedroom scene, a cat is shown half in shadow, half in light. She is not part of the action. She is the border between waking and sleep, and that, perhaps, is the truest understanding. Cats live at the edge of things, at the edge of firelight, at the edge of sound, the edge of waking, and so it is no surprise they would walk the edge of dreams as well. They did not guide, they did not lead, but they reminded the sleeper, "You are not gone, you are not alone, this world is not closed." Even now, in the slow, spiraling quiet of your own night, you may feel it, a shift in air, a warmth along your side, a presence you cannot quite name. It does not speak, it does not touch, but it watches your dream unfold, not as a master, not as a guardian, but as a companion, unseen by others, unmoved by time, troubled by reason. And just before you cross the final threshold into sleep, it may curl quietly in the corner of your mind, tuck its head beneath its paw, and begin to dream beside you, because even the dreamwalker dreams, and tonight perhaps you will dream together. By now, your body has softened. Your breath is slowed. Your thoughts arrive not as sentences, but as clouds passing through a sky too wide to hold them. And so the world begins to tilt gently to dream. But in ancient Egypt, dreams were not escape, they were travel. A kind of slow walking, not with your legs, but with your memory, your longing, your wonder. And if you wandered far enough in your dreams, you might find that you were not alone, because the Egyptians believed cats walk in dreams, not as symbols, not as memories, but as visitors, real, present, unbothered by the rules of distance or time. A cat seen in a dream, one dream scribe. Recorded is not your mind. It is the mind of another, brushing past you. Their presence in dreams was considered sacred, a kind of soft blessing. An unspoken message from the hidden parts of the world. Some dreams were quiet, a cat sitting on a windowsill that didn't exist, a cat walking across a floor you didn't recognize, a cat curling up beside you just before you woke, and yet you remembered her gaze, the sound of her breathing, the sense of being noticed in your sleep. Dream dash scribes, those trained to interpret. Visions kept long scrolls filled with cat dreams, each one marked carefully, not by meaning but by tone. Dreamt of a striped cat walking on water, felt peaceful. Dreamt of a cat sitting in a tree I used to climb, felt remembered. Dreamt a cat stared at the moon until it cracked open, woke crying. Don't know why. These were not omens, not fortunes. They were crossings. Moments when something beyond waking passed gently through. One belief said that cats, especially those who had died, could visit their former humans in dreams not to send messages, but to keep the connection. Alive, it was called Mutseked, the returning hush. When the cat appears, they said, "You are not dreaming, you're being visited." There are letters written to cats placed beside their mummified forms asking them to appear in dreams. Walk with me once more. One note reads, "When the lamps are out and I am alone, I will leave the door open inside my sleep." And sometimes they did. One scribe told of dreaming that his cat brought him a papyrus reed, laid it at his feet, and vanished. When he awoke, he wrote his first poem in 3 years. Others claimed they woke with the scent of their cat on the sheets, or found paw prints in undisturbed sand near the window. Did they imagine it? Perhaps. But the Egyptians did not think of dreams as imaginary. They were places, and cats were the only beings who moved between places without needing to knock. Some temples taught initiates to invite cats into their dreams. They would sleep beside small statues with incense burning, chanting softly until they drifted into the in-between. If the cat came, they did not speak. They did not teach, they simply sat. That was enough. She sat beside me on a boat I did not know, one novice wrote. We drifted for hours. I have not been afraid since. In paintings, there are few depictions of dreaming, but sometimes. Hidden in the corner of a bedroom scene, a cat is shown half in shadow, half in light. She is not part of the action. She is the border between waking and sleep, and that, perhaps, is the truest understanding. Cats live at the edge of things, at the edge of firelight, at the edge of sound, the edge of waking, and so it is no surprise they would walk the edge of dreams as well. They did not guide, they did not lead, but they reminded the sleeper, you are not gone, you are not alone, this world is not closed. Even now, in the slow, spiraling quiet of your own night, you may feel it, a shift in air, a warmth along your side, a presence you cannot quite name. It does not speak, it does not touch, but it watches your dream unfold, not as a master, not as a guardian, but as a companion, unseen by others, unmoved by time, troubled by reason. And just before you cross the final threshold into sleep, it may curl quietly in the corner of your mind, tuck its head beneath its paw, and begin to dream beside you, because even the dreamwalker dreams, and tonight perhaps you will dream together. The night is deeper now, the air heavier, but not oppressive, kind of weighted comfort, as if the world has laid a hand on your shoulder, not to stop you, but to let you know you are no longer needed elsewhere. This, too, was sacred and ancient. Egypt, not just beginnings, not just the golden bloom of birth or the drama of ascension, but endings. closures, the long, slow fade. They believed that nothing truly ended, but everything deserved to be ended well. The closing of a scroll. Final moment of a meal was the last step of a journey. Each was honored, and no creature symbolized this quiet art of departure. Better than the cat, because unlike people who marked endings with explanations, or tears or celebration, cats understood that some closures required only presence. Quiet curling up, a still gaze, a long blink, nothing more. Take, for instance, the end of a weaving. A woman would spend weeks on a single piece, pulling thread, twisting, knotting, correcting. And when it was done, she would not stand, or cheer, or call for witnesses. She would lay the finished cloth across her knees, stroke its edge once, and wait. Almost always, a cat would wander in, circle twice, and lie upon it. Only then was it considered finished. She knows when something is ready to rest, the woman might say. I trust her more than my eyes, or consider the end of a song. A reed player sits alone by the river, playing not for applause, but for the reeds themselves, their swaying shapes, their soft conversations in the wind. When the last note is played, he does not bow, he does not speak, he listens to the silence. That follows a silence that is never truly empty. And if a cat appears then, walking the shore, ears flicking, but tail slow, he knows. The river has heard. The song is whole, can end, even in the great libraries of Alexandria, where records were sacred and scrolls divine. Librarians were known to keep a cat near the sorting room. When a scroll was archived sealed, labeled, placed in its niche, a pause would follow. The cat would sometimes walk the shelves, sniff the new arrival, and sit beside it, not guarding, not choosing, just being there. Her stillness is the last ink a record keeper wrote. She signs it with silence. There was a belief among some scribes that time itself did not move in straight lines, but in spirals, each ending folding into a new beginning. Each closure feeding the soil of the next moment. Cats, they believed, felt these spirals, not in prophecy, but in posture. They knew when a day was closing. They knew when a space had served its purpose. You might see it in the way a cat left a room, not suddenly, but deliberately, a slow stretch. A tail like a question mark, gently. Closing the chapter behind her, there are tomb etchings, rarely studied, that show cats not in life, but at the moment of departure. Sitting beside extinguished lamps, walking the line where river meets sand, perched at the edge of a curtain as if listening for the final breath of a moment, and in homes. When someone passed from this world to the next, it was customary to leave the door slightly open, not to let the soul escape, but to let the cat pass through. She would walk the room once, not always, not predictably. But if she came, the family believed the ending had been accepted, not corrected, not healed, just acknowledged. Because sometimes the most sacred thing is not what we do when something ends, but how we accompany it. The Egyptians saw this in cats. Their ability to be beside what is no longer becoming is to sit with things that are done, to offer no reaction but presence. Even now, in the folds of your own night, you might feel that same quiet presence settling beside you, not pushing you further, not asking you to think or process, just being with you. This day, this hour, this breath completes itself. There is no rush. Nothing is missing. Nothing more is required. This is how endings were meant to be: slow, sacred, still, like the final curl of a cat's tail, like the last glimmer of dusk on a courtyard wall, like your body sinking deeper now into the safety of being finished. For today, no questions, no summaries, only presence, only peace, only the hush that comes when something ends. Not with a sound, but with a shared silence. There is a space just past the final waking thought where the world feels remembered, not actively, not clearly, but as if something in it has stayed with you, a shape, a sound, a weight on the end of the bed that shouldn't be there. But as this, the Egyptians believed, was not a trick of the mind. It was a visitation. Not of ghosts, but of memory made gentle. They believed that what was love never fully left, but softened, faded, curled like smoke into the folds of daily life. And in those folds you would sometimes find a cat, not a specific cat, not always the one you knew, but a presence that bore the feeling of her, shape that echoed the comfort she once gave, a movement just slow enough, just silent enough, to tell you something has remained. Because in ancient Egypt, memory was not linear. It was not a shelf you reached for. It was a place you entered. A room with many windows, a garden you could walk without map or purpose, and cats, they believed, were the gardeners of this remembering. Not by tending, not by ordering, but by being present enough to hold a space open. In homes where a cat had once lived, people would sometimes leave the floor beneath her favorite sunbeams, unwashed for weeks, not out of superstition but reverence. She chose this spot, they'd say. Let the warmth remain. In temples, some alcoves were sealed, not because they were broken, but because they had once been loved by a temple cat. These were known as Neter-tu Emu, silent corners, that remember, and in dreams, as we've seen, cats were among the few things that could return not as symbols, but as echoes with weight. There were even rituals for speaking to memory as if it still had ears. You would light a small lamp, sit near the edge of your bed or mat, and if you had loved a cat in this life, you could murmur to the air, "Come lie beside me again." Sometimes nothing happened. Other times, you'd wake up feeling a warmth along your ribs, pressure, gentle and familiar, gone by morning, but deeply real. They called it Sekret in Renet, the visit of what stays. Because memory, in Egyptian thought, was not for grief, it was for continuity. It was not about mourning what had been, but allowing it to gently flow forward through daily gestures, through tiny acknowledgments, through the simple decision to keep a space open for what once brought peace. And cats, their quiet persistence, taught humans how to do this, to revisit without disrupting, to return without demanding, to remember without pain. One papyrus tells the story of a boy who, every evening, would sit on the rooftop with his cat and count the stars as they appeared. She would blink at each one. He believed she was blessing them. Years after her passing, he still climbed the roof, still counted. When as he reached the 10th star, he felt a tail brush his ankle. He did not flinch. He did not cry, simply whispered, "You still keep watch." because that is what memory became in the presence of cats. Not a wound, not a weight, but a watchfulness. A continued companionship that asked for nothing but was felt everywhere. In the hush before sleep. In the empty windowsill you still avoid. Stepping past. In the way your body shifts slightly to make room for something that may no longer be there but somehow still is. And now, as your own body settles deeper and the night grows quieter still, you may find yourself brushing up. Against such a memory, not sharply, not suddenly, but as if you are walking through a room that someone once loved. The kind of memory that doesn't pull you back. It joins you here, like a cat, arriving without sound, without fanfare, without explanation. Just sitting soft-eyed. And still, a reminder not of what is gone, but of what continues gently, unnoticed, in the quiet corners of your life. You do not need to speak. You do not need to reach. You only need to rest. To allow what stays to sit beside you, curled in the hollow of your breath, blinking slowly as the stars appear one by one outside your dreaming window.